The World Mission Society Church of God says that there are two gods versus just one. They say that the word Elohim is plural. So that means that there is not one God. There has to be more than one. Well, today we're going to go through the scripture to see exactly how many gods there are. How many gods are testified to have created the heavens and the earth. We're going to go through this through three very simple basic topics. Elohim and bara, the singular we see in Daniel chapter 2, and plural nouns. The World Mission Society Church of God says Elohim means gods, plural, and it does. Elohim means God with an S, gods. This word alone implies that there is more than one God. Well, if the original text says gods, plural, then why do we see God, singular, in our English translation? This is because the people who were translating the Bible understood that even though Elohim is God's plural, it actually refers to one singular God. Let's look at Genesis chapter 1, verse 1.
Genesis 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
It says Elohim created. Elohim means God's plural. But it says that Elohim, God's plural, created. Bara is created in Hebrew. Now, if the noun is plural, then the verb should also be plural. Or if the noun is singular, then the verb should also be singular. However, when we look into the Hebrew language, we can see that that doesn't always happen. Like in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. God created the heavens and the earth. But it says Elohim, God, plural, bara, created, singular. I learned today that in the Hebrew language, the verb denotes the noun. The verb will tell you whether or not the noun is plural or singular. So then, why does Elohim mean God's plural if it's only one God? Well, it is a way to show His majesty. It's like the royal. Now that we've gone through Elohim and bara, I hope it wasn't too difficult for you to understand. Let's discuss the singular we in Daniel chapter 2. Daniel chapter 2 is about the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had, but Daniel interpreted.
Daniel chapter 2, verse 36. This was the dream, and now we will interpret it to the king.
Now, even though Daniel is one person, he still said, we will interpret it for the king. That's plural. Some may say, oh, well, they're talking about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But that's not true.
Daniel chapter 2, verse 19. During the night, the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision. Then Daniel praised the God of heaven.
Verse 19 says that Daniel received the vision. Only Daniel. Not Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, but Daniel received the vision.
Daniel chapter 2, verse 24 through 25. Then Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to execute the wise men of Babylon, and said to him, do not execute the wise men of Babylon. Take me to the king, and I will interpret his dream for him. Arioch took Daniel to the king at once, and said, I have found a man among the exiles from Judah, who can tell the king what his dream means.
Daniel went to Arioch. And then Arioch took Daniel to the king. I don't care if I'm saying Arioch right, but we understand that it was only Daniel who had the dream, who went to the king to interpret it.
Daniel chapter 2, verse 26. The king asked Daniel, also called Belshazzar, are you able to tell me what I saw in my dream and interpret it?
Now in verse 26, the king says to Daniel, if Daniel is going to interpret the dream for him. Daniel, Daniel, Daniel. No Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And yet in verse 36 he still says we. But why? is because of the royal we. We are not pleased. Kings and queens constantly use the royal we. And Daniel, given that he was up there, I would not be surprised that he would use the royal we as well. But Daniel, he's still one person. So, now that that's covered, let's talk about some other plural nouns. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 46, we can see another plural noun which isn't used in a plural context.
Genesis chapter 27, verse 46. Then Rebekah said to Isaac, I'm disgusted with living because of these Hittite women. If Jacob takes a wife from among the women of this land, the Hittite women like these, my life will not be worth living.
Rebekah says that my life is not worth living. But life in Hebrew in that verse is chaim. If I'm pronouncing it wrong, get over it. But it's chaim, which is plural. So was Rebekah talking about her lives? Aren't we giving just one life? And yet she used the word chaim to describe her singular life. You get the point now? Just because the noun is plural does not mean it's used in a plural context. When you take one word, chaim, Elohim, alone, yes, it looks like multiples. Pretend that says plural. But when you look at the context in which it's used, my life is not worth living, Rebekah didn't have multiple lives. She was only given one life. Elohim created. Hello? Singular. We have to look into the concept. Well, we've gone through all three topics. Now, after studying the scripture in its original context, how many gods can we say there are? How many gods are we supposed to be worshiping? Just one.